My expertise, I came from the insurance side, from the insurance industry. The first 20 years of my practice was as national coverage and reinsurance counsel, and I did travel in Europe too, but unlike my esteemed colleague, I'm not going to go through my countries that I've been to. But for the last 10, 12 years, I've represented solely policyholders. So I come from both sides of the spectrum and have actually a great respect for both and have maybe a little bit more I've worked on underwriting claims and for the executive offices of the carriers as well as some of the top insureds in the country. So what I want to talk about is really, while the case law is certainly out there and changing, my focus, and I do have a paper in the materials you have, is called Bringing Money to the Table. What really, when we get into these disputes, what we're all looking for, typically, unless there's a clear-cut legal way out of it, is some way to resolve it, and of course that takes money. One of the things that we are brought in to do routinely around the United States is try to figure ways out of a construction defect case that might be a little bit more creative and haven't been done before. One of the methods that we've been using quite a bit and have had great success in, and this is typically used, we're brought in by owners, contractors, banks. When the property, they've taken over the property, we've been retained by the bankruptcy courts to come in and find the money, is when you've got a typical situation where always the first trigger is someone immediately thinks of a construction defect and let's sue everyone, which is all fine in its own place, that'll always go on. And then bringing in all the CGL carriers and everyone's carriers on that end. There's also the property policies typically that can get very much involved, and we've had a great deal of luck of bringing money to the table from that end. So you're dealing with the builder's risk or the commercial or residential property policies. To get that done, it's a very interesting process. We work hand in glove with just about everyone involved across the table, not only the plaintiff lawyers who are suing for the construction defect, but we get involved with the CGL representatives, and then we, of course, are representing whoever the insured is, owner, contractor, sub, to try to get their property carrier involved. Now, the interesting thing about the property policies is many of these are either all risk or specific peril. This goes for builder's risk too, so I'm speaking across the board. You don't need, the worry there is not there about the occurrence. So a lot of the issues that you're struggling with in CGL, you really don't have for the builder's risk or the property. While it needs to be a fortuitous event, you almost never run into that problem for the contractor's point of view, the owner's point of view. That's rarely ever an issue with these policies. Now, typically, they're going to raise the property carrier, the builder's risk carrier will say, well, there's a construction defect case going on. There are defect exclusions, workmanship exclusions, all the things you would typically expect to find. However, the critical piece is, one, these are all risk policies, meaning all you have to have is some sort of damage to the property and the carrier is triggered and now the money is at risk. The exclusions almost across the board that we come across almost anywhere in the United States have what we refer to as ensuing loss exceptions to the exclusions. So, for instance, let's say a commercial building is having water intrusion for whatever reason, leaking or moisture, whatever that might be. Of course, there's going to likely be some trace back to some roof that wasn't put on correctly or a product defect in a window, and all that litigation will go on. However, the case law, and we've developed a number of it around the country, is coming down saying because of the way these exclusions are written and the exceptions to them, while the insured will not get money for the cost to repair the defect itself, it is entitled to money to repair everything that was caused by that defect. So, if water's running down a commercial building and ruining the joists and the drywall and the interior and the windows and it has to be ripped apart, we've been very successful in getting the first party, what I refer to as first party, the property carrier, to step in and pay for that portion of it, separating apart the defect case. So that's why I say we worked hand in glove across the board with the carrier who's going after the construction defect, and the carrier who then is the CGL for all of those entities. And of course, then, what you want to do is obviously get everyone to pool those funds. But this has been a significant, a substantial amount of money that we brought to the table in everything from earth retention system movements to, water coming in, to asbestos cases where they've had asbestos that have been released. So this is really a beneficial way, especially in these economic times, to have one more shot at least of bringing some additional folks to the table and trying to get it resolved. But the interesting thing about this is, no one is hiding anything. Yep, there's a defect. And the cost to repair that defect, if it's windows that were put in inappropriately, is $2.5 million. But the cost to rectify the damage to the rest of the building or the homes or whatever it might be $4 million. And so it's separated out along the lines that the policies denote, along the lines that liability denotes. So it's a nice package that people can use, and everyone walks away pretty happy.